Hello, good afternoon. I continue the awakening letters. These are letters from Lady Sandys and Rosamond Lehman. Cynthia, Lady Sandys, is a clairaudient channel, and she is a recorder of remarkable purity. And over 30 years, they have a selection of letters received through her mental mediumship. There are very interesting letters, and I started this yesterday, and I continue today reading a few more letters. This letter is from a very clever woman who died suddenly from heart failure. This book was published in 1979. I'm amazed by all that has happened to me. I don't know where to begin. I do want you to know that Patricia has been the very hinge of my new understanding. She is so calm and unchanged. I simply couldn't believe it was she, and that both she and I had passed through death and appeared to each other to be quite unchanged. You've no idea what a help she was to me, with her quick wit and clear explanations. If only I could share all this with H. Do you think it would be possible? Patricia tells me that these separations are meant so that we can learn to grow our perceptive powers without the use of form or sound. It's all enthrallingly interesting and full of possibilities. I had no idea that I should be wandering about the house and garden with my arm linked in H. I seem to be quite unchanged. May I tell you how it all happened? My heart gave out, and that was that. I fell into a coma and woke up to find myself in a curious light. It wasn't sunlight or moonlight or electric light. It was different from any light I'd ever seen. I tried to go to sleep again, but the light was rather disturbing, and to this were added voices laughing and talking. I rather wished they'd stop. After all, I had been ill, and they might remember and leave me quiet. But the voices came nearer, and at last I could bear it no longer. I got up, but instead of feeling tired and ill, I was perfectly all right. At that moment, someone waved to me saying, "It's lovely to see you awake at last." I felt rather annoyed at not having been allowed to sleep on. Other people came pouring in from both sides. I half recognized some of them and was on the point of saying so when they vanished, and someone else took their place. Then suddenly I saw Pat, and I felt I must hold on to her. I said, "Stay with me, I don't feel very well." She sat down at once and explained just why I was feeling so muddled and insecure. It was a horrid feeling. I came over to this plane with no idea of what I should find. It was all half light and half shadow. Patricia was an expert at explaining, and we were soon in fits of laughter. I can't tell you how amusing she made me sound. Then one of my own family, whom I'd half recognized, came back and suddenly grasped the fact that I'd died and left H forever. "No, never forever," said Pat. "And if you like, we'll go straight back to your home now." The very idea frightened me. What should I find? Would it be tolerable to see H and the children? Pat was very practical. She said, "I think you better get used to the idea first and clear your mind of all this death business." I longed to explain how hard it would be for H to see it in this light, whereupon Pat, seeming to read my thoughts, replied, "If he fails to make a mental contact, he'll have lost the opportunity, which is one of the main objects of physical life. That was so completely new to me that I had to go away and think it over and pray about it. I asked Pat about prayer, and she said, "Oh, it's wonderful here, just try." So we prayed together. How I wish I had the power to write and describe the wonderful release that came. God seemed to be within touch and breath. I was enfolded by the presence. It was beyond words. I felt that I had become immediately a part of the divine, whole. I seemed to be a separate person and felt suddenly as though I'd been fitted into my place, like a piece in a jigsaw puzzle. If this is what death means, and if we die in order to bring this ecstasy into the lives of those we leave behind, I can only say how thankful I am that I have been allowed to pass over so easily and to learn this without any further waste of time. Received from the same writer 1 year later. Pat has shown me how to get moving, as she calls it. I find so many people come over here quite unprepared. They are often completely shattered by the shock of discovering that they are dead. They have always avoided discussing or even thinking of it. Then it happens, and they drive themselves quite silly over the fact that their relations are unable to see or hear them, while they themselves are fully able to see the grief of those left behind. In this state, they often refuse all help from us, and when they become used to this unseen life, they settle down to wait in comparative comfort. When their relations join them, they either continue to wait for someone else, or they begin to ask themselves, what else is there? And having done nothing on this side, they have built up a sort of waiting wall, which grows automatically between them and the rest, between them and the next stage of life. I've tried to wake up some of my old friends, and with Pat's help, I've jolted some of them out of these ruts. It seems to me terribly important that we should evolve, and Pat and I are both doing this, so that when our beloveds join us, we shall be able to help them. Next letter. This letter is from a country doctor, a general practitioner. May I write? I was a doctor on earth, and I knew you all intimately. My name is Sykes. I was very fond of you all, but I had no use for religion or faith healing or any of those sentimental emotions. Pain was far too real to be tackled like that. I suffered and came over in a rather battered state of mind. There seemed to be so much useless suffering and unhappiness, and it seemed to be all without rhyme or reason. Then I woke up in a hospital. I had died at home and could not think how I'd got there. But it was a most wonderful place. I became instantly so much excited by what I saw, and felt that I had no idea that I was looking at etheric treatment. A doctor came over to me and asked how I was feeling, adding, "We shall be glad to teach you all we know." Well, I wasn't asking anything except in my own mind, but he was answering my unspoken thought. I found myself wondering if my blood pressure could be taken, and he replied at once, "Yes, if you like, but we don't need to here. The blood circulates quite differently." What did he mean? He sat down beside me, and out of nowhere a diagram appeared, showing the organs and arteries of my new body. "This is what you've got to work on now," he explained. I thought I must be going mad. Here was a diagram of a body similar in shape to the one I knew, but with feeding ducts, digestive organs, and so on, of a much simpler kind. I noticed all the pressure points of the body were marked with light intake, color intake, heat intake, and so on. The digestive organs seemed to be on a rotary system. It looked like one large flywheel that drew in from all sides the white and colored rays, transforming them into energy and life, such as I am now experiencing. After a few moments he sensed that I couldn't take in any more. The diagram vanished and I slept, thinking. The next thing that I remember was hearing the music. Lovely, deep music, like a church organ. I felt as though it were putting strength and weight into me. If I had felt lightheaded before, that had now gone. I was being fed. That was the sensation. Definitely fed on music. And when I became replete, I slept again. May I write again sometime? Yes, I should like to go on. I told you that I came over here with no understanding or belief in the spiritual life. I did not deny that it existed, but it was so far disassociated from ordinary life as to be completely out of touch for the ordinary man and women. Now I found it was me and people like me who were deflecting the healing rays from reaching the earth. Of course, I'm most deeply ashamed, and I've taken great trouble and care to learn the way of passing it into your bodies. I know you all very well on both sides of the curtain of life, and I also know that you are often imploring aid for others. So I would like to work through you and your husband, if you will let me. Look upon me as the doctor whom you knew and explain the troubles to me in mind, and ask that the power which surrounds and interpenetrates us all may be focused for the greater health of those whom you want to heal. I would like to go on telling you about my experiences on first coming over here. I told you about the diagram of the etheric body and how I took in all I could and then slept. On waking, I found the same man beside me. He asked me at once if I would like to come into the operating theatre. I said yes, but I must first dress. Then I realized how strange it all was. The moment I got out of bed, I was dressed and feeling well and rested and eager to learn anything. He took my arm to steady me as the ground seemed to rise and fall and I had no power of balancing in my new body. We floated out through the wall to my great amazement and found ourselves in a garden with a lake surrounded by enormous trees. When we reached the end of the lake, at the edge of the lake, he made as though he wanted to push me in, but I found instead that I was sliding above the lake without touching the water and feared that the spell should break and I should fall with a splash at any moment. I determined to accept it all as quite natural and tried to think of the lake as not a watery lake at all, and soon I had many other things to think about. In the center, radiating outwards on all sides, were beautiful colored rays, flashing such bright colors that by the time we reached the center, I was feeling terribly giddy. The doctor, sensing my discomfort, said at once, "Look down," which I did, into a blue of such healing calm that the giddiness left me at once. Then he said, "Look up." And again I met this strange mesmeric blue and felt myself sandwiched in between these two belts of blue with the flashing, glowing rays all around me. I'd lost sight of the lake and the trees as such, but now I saw that people were coming and going among us, drawing others with them who seemed to be asleep or unconscious. Many of these people had crippled, twisted bodies. I saw the helpers lay them in a horizontal position on a ray, using it as though it were a table, straightening out their limbs quite simply, then focus another ray upon them, and then, and still in a deep state, float them away out of sight. I was gasping with questions, and my doctor friend needed no further vocal word, but started off at once to explain. These were mostly the etheric bodies of people who had suffered from polio, or been crippled or paralyzed in some way. They had all to be treated before they woke up, and it was all quite simple. He explained that there was no illness of the etheric body. They only became crumpled like a dress, which is always being worn crooked. They have to be straightened and strengthened, and that is all. I asked what would happen if we did that on Earth. He said, it all depends on the patient. Here, no one thwarts you in mind, while on the physical plane, they are always searching for a physical explanation. But if the human mind could accept simple healing, it would be healed. So my first treatment is straighten your body when you go to bed, so that the force can flow up and down without hindrance. Thank you. I would like to go on. It was the most extraordinary thing, but I feel so much better. More myself, less vague, and far more composed after I have been writing through you. It seems to focus my mind by giving me a sense of that rock-like existence which it was on the physical plane. I see now that I have lived a very narrow life with few new ideas, and it's a hard job breaking up the habits of 70-odd years. But we have to do it. No one makes us, but we have to become elastic in mind and body. No one makes us, but we have to become elastic in mind and body. I must tell you that I felt very cumbersome when we first started writing. It was so new to me. It was so new to me. But I feel already that you are pushing me on, giving me an incentive to work through you on the physical plane, where my heart and mind are still active. I had no idea that this was possible, nor was it to this extent in my day. But now there are many, many doctors over here who are ready and anxious to work through you. I was starved of opportunity. I never met the big men of my day, and I longed to be in the swim. Now I feel I'm right there, and it's most intoxicating. That is why I said that writing with you makes me realize the constriction of earthly life again, and the feeling of inability to heal, which was so often my lot. Now I see no reason for any healing whatsoever to fail. When you send us to anyone in need of healing, try and do so during the hours when they would normally be sleeping. Then we have the ego out of gear, as it were, with a clutch running freely. This time of sleep is most vital. Sleep corrects the whole setup of the mental machine. So when you prepare for sleep, you cannot take too much trouble, either for yourself or for your patient. The queer drift into sleep is the vital moment. So I've stopped this here. Patricia and Sally were daughters of Lady Sandy and Rosamond Lehman. They died both young and tragically, and it is Patricia in this instance here who is bringing through the messages to Sandy. I hope you enjoyed that. I do. Today is Easter Monday.